Thanks for watching. My name is James with Office Insiders, and today we're going to talk about the difference between enterprise-level leases and small business leases in the city of Houston. Let's talk about some essential pieces that you look at, your checklist, so to speak, for an enterprise-level lease.
That's a great question. Well, and let's just take it as a given that the business points have been heavily negotiated. So your rent, your free rent, your concession package, those types of things we've already negotiated heavily if we're involved.
Yeah.
I think where people can get tripped up are the details, and those would be details in the lease itself. So I tend to focus heavily on like the sublease and assignment provisions. What happens if you have to dispose of your space? You need to get bigger space, or you need to get smaller space, or kind of mitigate your losses. The casualty provisions, the interruption of services provisions, which oftentimes get ignored, but in recent times with COVID have been heavily examined. And as well during some of our 500-year floods, the 3 we've had in the last 3 years, people can't get into their premises. So that's another area that I look at. Is the landlord trying to pull back some of the deal points you've worked hard to negotiate in the event that you have an event of default? So just making sure the document's consistent with the terms that had been agreed to, whether in a handshake or in a letter of intent.
He's talking about agreed to terms, and he's talking about negotiations at the small business level. That's the first thing we have to understand, is that there is room to negotiate, right? Things can be negotiated. A lot of the times these business owners feel like what's been presented to me is the offer, and it is take it or leave it. And so walking through the lease and negotiating some of the provisions is highly important, and that's a first step issue, I think, for some of these smaller business owners.
It's a great point, Quincy. And one thing that I've seen where folks go on their own and get in trouble is not thinking ahead with their strategy. They are under the gun to get some space, to find an office, so they just march forward and do that without thinking about future growth, without thinking about who else might I bring in, who do I need to attract and retain if I'm going to start hiring. What happens if I need to get out? And so that's something that's critical to us, is being there to help the business needs, help the real estate align with the business needs. And then we create a lease that helps do that.
You talk about the lease that you've created in the first place, and you also talk about thinking through things. Here's one difference. Oftentimes that enterprise client has a lease they're very familiar with. They may even be the drafter of the lease, right?
Right.
On the small business side, that's very rarely the case. And so the drafter of this lease, which is going to be that other, the landlord or the real estate holder, that individual or entity, they have created a lease that is supportive of their provisions, right? Anytime the drafter creates a contract, it's normally going to reflect their interests.
Absolutely. I've been brought in. I can think of one specific client, a physician, small business. I was brought in kind of 11th hour to help them negotiate, and they had been given a lease, and the landlord just said, sign it. And they asked me, well, should I sign this? And I looked through it, and it was incredibly onerous. You know, I mean, there's a personal guarantee on that. Right. And this physician didn't know that. And that's a bright person who just was overwhelmed with a document and felt bad about saying, can I make any changes to this?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we're trying to help identify these areas to protect our clients. And for our enterprise level clients and the 1 or 2 person small business, protecting them, protecting their interest personally is critical, or for a corporate setting, minimizing their exposure.
Minimizing. See, at Husch Blackwell, we would like to create a template for you. And maybe you don't use that template. Maybe you use the template that's been provided to you. But at least you can compare some of the provisions. You can see a document that has been created for your interest, and you can compare that to one that may not have been created for your interests.
So, you know,